Hi, welcome to Kayla Williams. I'm Kim. So, today we're going to have a little conversation about what is by far the number one leadership skill that most managers overlook. No, no. Not overlook, just get plain wrong. Grabbing the coffee. Although, let's spill some tea. Just kidding. Okay, so what do you think is the number one skill that most managers overlook or just get wrong? I dare say communication would be your guess. Yes, communication. Perhaps professionalism. Professionalism? Or let's see, confidence. Everyone loves a confident leader, right? Yeah, no, none of these are actually they. So the most overlooked and just honestly gotten plain wrong skill that leaders have is empathy. You knew it was coming. You knew it was coming. Let's dig in. By far, one of the most important, if not the most important skill that a leader can have, if done right, it establishes trust. It actually helps with accountability. And it just makes a relationship between two humans working together in any type of environment just a lot more healthy. So empathy I'm not going to give you like the Merriam-Webster definition. You can look that up, or Google definition. You can look that up. Let's talk about what it means, what it really feels like. So empathy is when you truly understand or try to put yourself in someone else's shoes, right? So as a leader, when you're responsible for the care, which is what I believe leaders and managers do, you're responsible for the care and the welfare of those that you work with. Um, Being able to put yourself in those person's shoes, right? So empathy, just like with any relationship, any type of life you try to lead, and you try to lead it empathetically, you don't just look at the facts. You don't just take the data, right? You actually try to put yourself in that person's shoes, in their circumstances, not given your background and given your understanding of the world and giving your experience and your title, but theirs. You try to truly understand what it is that they are feeling, going through, the skill set that they have, perhaps a skill set they need. That is what empathy really looks like. To take it one step further, it's not just understanding, but showing that you care about their challenges, showing that you care about their needs. So, A, you understand. Next, you care. Now, I do want to be clear because sometimes empathy gets misconceived. It is not being a pushover, it's about creating balance. It's a part of building a relationship with another human so that you can work together more effectively. Perhaps you get to meet an interesting and fun individual. It helps add to your life, it helps add to your work. So it is not about balancing numbers, but creating a balance in your relationship with this person. That is more of the focus of what you're looking at when we're talking about empathy. Not to overemphasize what empathy is not, but let's clear it up here. Empathy is understanding others' perspectives. Empathy is not lowering standards, lacking accountability, or being a pushover. Now, as I stated previously, empathy connects to other key parts of being a good leader and or a good manager. Um, and that has to do more with like communication, accountability, trust, right? So when you are empathetic as a leader and you demonstrate this, it creates a bond, it creates trust. For example, I have had the opportunity to manage and lead during some of the most trying times in different industries. For example, when I was in real estate, I was with the real estate team in the early 2000s, and that was during the housing bubble. It was a rough time, right? It's a rough time to be a real estate agent. And another rough time, for example, was managing during COVID or having to lead organizations through mass layoffs, during the more recent times. And had I not built up a level of empathy and trust with the teams that I managed, that could have been really stressful and really hard on all of us, more than it already was, right? So, one of the things was during that sales cycle in the early 2000s, finding creative ways of helping real estate agents find and land different sales, working more in depth with like investors and things like that, where maybe those big expensive houses weren't selling, but we doubled down on being able to do something different, being able to pivot, as it were. Big corporate word. We love those. But we're not going to use too much of that. But that is where you would use it. Okay, that is where you would use that word, not just for fun. Being able to do something different as opposed to just focusing on what is not working, we focus more on how we can make it work. Or during COVID, an enormous amount of empathy had to be felt. We were all going through trying times, as well as during mass layoffs. So some things are outside of your control, right? As a leader or as a manager, such as mass layoffs. While it is not an empathetic thing for a corporation to do, and you as a manager may not have full control over who stays and who goes, depending on the different levels you're at. However, what you can do as a leader during that time is build that trust. Communicate openly with your team as much as you can. Have conversations individually with people to kind of make sure that they have the skill set that they need, or they feel confident to know that no matter what happens with this company, you have their back as an individual, as a human, not as a cog in the corporate wheel, right? You have a job to do as a manager, and that's to get things done. But as a leader, which all managers are also leaders, you have an obligation to that individual to help them understand this career extends beyond just the role, and you are there for them beyond just the role. So even if the company is going through layoffs, which is stressful and hard on everyone, yourself included, I'm sure, right? So you're going through the same thing, but think of how much it would make you feel better if your leadership lets you know, look, this is where the corporation is going. These are the numbers, but I am here for you. We will work through this. This isn't the only job in the world. I will help you with letters of recommendation. We will talk about building skill sets to make sure that you as an individual, you're prepared no matter what the market does. Okay, for a sense of practicality, let me give you 3 practical tips on how to practice being an empathetic leader. Number 1, actively listen. What that looks like. When you are having a conversation with anyone on your team, and you should be having these conversations regularly, we should probably talk about one-on-ones. I digress. Actively listen without interrupting. And if you come from certain backgrounds or you have big families, that can be pretty hard for some of us. Guilty. But actively listening without interrupting means that you're listening to the words that they are saying. You're not thinking of what you're going to say next. You're not coming up with a rebuttal. If you have questions, you're holding them until they're done. Possibly your question will get answered. So actively listening. Listen to your employee, like listen to the person that you're working with. They're communicating to you. Look at their body language. Like actively listen, pay attention. You never know what you might learn about a person just by listening. Number 2, I alluded to it in number 1, but check in with your team regularly. So yes, you have the team meetings. Uh, I cannot overemphasize the importance of one-on-ones. Either you can pick a schedule that works for you and your direct of weekly, bi-weekly. I wouldn't do it too much less than bi-weekly, honestly. And you're checking in with your team not from a practical standpoint. You're not checking in to find out about their performance or their productivity. You're not necessarily checking in to find out how their daughter is doing in ballet, right? You don't have to be that personal if that is not your personality. For some of us, it is. I like to know. However, you are trying to connect with them as a human. How are they doing? Like, for real, beyond the word fine or good. How are they doing? How are they dealing with the change in seasons? Um, Perhaps they needed some time off. Are they good from that? Are they recovered? What is it that they're doing outside of work for fun? Like, do they have hobbies? So things like that, just get to know them, connect with them as a human. If you notice they have a plant in their background, do they know what type of plant that is? Is it real? Is it fake? Notice that they have an art collection behind them. Ask them questions, especially if you are working remote, as so many of us are. You notice they come in with different clothing or they have some. Notice, pay attention, check in regularly. These are only things that you'll have a conversation about if you're talking to them all the time. Your one-on-one and your check-ins are not just about productivity or direct problems or challenges. Those will come up because they know they have your attention and they're going to want to address those. But if you don't have an agenda for the day, talk to them anyway. I'm a poet. That rhymes. Number 3. Now, this one can be a little tricky. Like, you want to acknowledge feelings, but you want to focus on solutions. Now, I'll be honest, there are times when sometimes people just want to vent, and you'll get to know your person, right? You'll get to know the employee, you'll get to know your direct, you'll get to know your coworkers, and sometimes they just need to vent. But as their manager, as a leader, you want to try to focus on solutions when possible, right? So if there are things that have a possible solution, focus on those. Don't just let them spiral. Like, don't just spiral. Don't just spiral out of control with, sometimes there's healthy venting. Oh, it's so cold. I'm tired of the cold. And you can talk about possible solutions. Well, what are you doing to make yourself more comfortable? Like, do you have a heater? Like, is your heater working? Is there climate control in the room that you're in? Like, are you dressing appropriately for the weather? Is it, it's whatever, or you're too hot, you're too cold, whatever, those type of things. They have solutions. Now, some things are much more complicated, and it may take several conversations before you figure out a solution, but acknowledge their feelings. Hear what they're saying. Don't dismiss them. Don't justify a reason why the feelings, aren't really valid or not that important or not a priority. If they've said it, acknowledge it and work through a possible solution or possible solutions. Well, I've reached the end of my coffee, which also had a cinnamon stick. Have you ever tried that? I digress. I've reached the end of my coffee and the end of this video. I hope that you have found this useful. I would love to hear from you all. So what's one way that you've shown empathy as a leader? Give us some practical examples. I've talked through a few, but I know there are tons out there. People are out there crushing it, doing their thing. There's more examples from different industries and different walks of life that I probably haven't even heard of. Perhaps you have questions about how to be a more empathetic leader, or you can anonymously, if you choose, share some specific challenges that I can talk through or we can talk through in the comments. I am all about the comments. So let's talk about it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to subscribe so that you can hear more of my leadership tips and anecdotes, and we'll talk about the next cup of coffee, whatever it is that is of interest to you. But I appreciate your time, and until the next video, Take care.